All right, so now that we're done cleaning up all these pieces, we're ready to install the suede on this. And just like we did on the headliner, we're going to mark the direction that we want the nap to run on this. And we want to position this so that the nap is running in the correct direction when the visor is folded up. So this is the bottom piece of the headliner here, and it's going to sit like this in the car when it's folded up. So we need the nap to be running this direction. So I'm going to mark an arrow on here so that we know which direction and position we need to put this onto the suede when we glue it together. So I'm just going to put an arrow right like that so we don't forget. And now we can go ahead and glue these pieces onto our suede. Now I already have some arrows marked on here from before for which direction the nap is running. So I'm just going to cut out a section we can use here because we don't need this whole big piece in our way while we're trying to glue this together. All right, so I'm going to start to spray the glue on all these pieces so we can go ahead and glue them down. I also have a fresh piece of cardboard down because we made such a nasty mess on the piece before when we were cleaning these off. You want to make sure that you don't get anything on your fabric that's going to stain it or damage it. Okay, now we're ready to stick these down, and one thing that I want to mention is that whenever you're gluing something, what I don't recommend you do is just take your piece of fabric and the piece that you're gluing and put it right on top of your fabric and press it down, because you never know if you're pressing any wrinkles into the piece that you're gluing on when you do it that way. So what we're going to do is we're just going to lightly, put it down here, and then we're going to flip it over, and we're going to smooth and stretch the fabric over top of this piece. All right, something right about like that's looking pretty good there. Now we can go ahead and start doing this piece. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to lay this right over top of the other one, and we're going to make sure it's lined up just perfect. We need to make sure this is lined up just perfect because this is where this is basically lining everything up for when we finish this, because we're going to fold the fabric over and then we're going to open this back up, and we need to make sure it's positioned exactly where we want it. So this is looking pretty good here. So when you get it right where you want it, we're just going to roll this edge up right here. And then we're going to finish wrapping this all the way around. All right, now I'm just going to open this up. We'll finish pulling this around all the edges here. All right, now once we get to this point, what we're going to do is just spray some glue on this inside edge here so that we can fold our pieces over and glue them to the inside, and that's going to make that nice finished seam where you can't see anything. It's going to look really nice. once we close these two pieces in on themselves. Okay, while we're waiting for this glue to tack up, I'm just going to start trimming around the edge here. We're going to want to leave, you know, about 3/8 of an inch. We don't want too much because we need to allow some area for the glue when we've closed these up. But we don't want too little because we want to leave enough fabric there for it to grab and fold around the edge here. So about 3/8 of an inch is what I'm going to cut this at. All right, so I'm going to put some steam on these two areas here to help bring this around the edge here because it's got kind of a funny curve there and we want to make sure that it looks good when we're done. That's looking pretty good there. All right, now I'm going to start folding everything over around the edge here. So in the corners, all I'm doing is just pinching, doing small little pinches to gather up the fabric and then pressing it down. And that works pretty well. That way you don't have to put a bunch of relief cuts in there. Okay, now we can go ahead and cut out this area for the mirror here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut it out, you know, rough cut it out, and then I want to put a little bit of extra glue on here because I want to make sure this sticks really, really well because there's just a tiny amount of gap that this is covered by on the that plastic trim piece that we have to put in on here. And if the fabric comes loose or anything a little bit, it's a good chance that it's going to pull out and you'll be able to see it past the plastic trim piece that we have to put on here. So I want to make absolutely certain that this fabric is glued down really well right along this edge right here. So I'm just making some relief cuts there to help so the fabric can go up into these corners here. Now I'm just going to cut the corners all the way to the edge to let this fabric relax in there so that there's no tension pulling it back. And now I'm just going to cut this off flush with my scissors here. All right, once we're finished with that, we can install the frame with the mirror and we can put that trim piece on. So we'll do that right now. Just going to make sure that everything is nice and clean on this. Looks like we got a little bit of that glue on here from when we were taking these apart. All right, so that's looking pretty good there. So we're just gonna place this inside here. Get it all lined up where it's supposed to be sitting. And then we're just gonna take our little trim piece here and install it the exact same way we pulled it off. If you remember, it's got these two little hoops here that need to hook around the tab, and then we're just gonna pull it backwards. Actually, I'm gonna clean this trim piece just a little bit too before we put this on. Okay, it looks like I accidentally clicked that clip in there before I got the other clips inside the tabs here, so I'm gonna have to pop that back out. Not too big of a deal. We just have to push in on that little clip here like when we were taking this off. So that's out now. Let's try this again. Well, I got half of it that time, so let's try this one more time. All right, there we go. We got it that time. Just make sure everything's locked in place nicely. Looks like it is. All right, now we can go ahead and I'm going to show you guys how to glue this back together. All right, so what I'm gonna use to glue these back together is this Loctite Quick Dry Instant Mix Epoxy. Now, this stuff is a little bit expensive and you can probably use something cheaper, but I really like this because it dries really fast and I'm not that patient. I don't know about you guys, but I don't wanna wait, 24 hours for some glue to dry so I can finish this job. That's just me. If I can spend a couple extra bucks to get things done quicker, I'm going to do it. So this is what I recommend you use. I also like this because it has these little tips on here that mixes the epoxy by itself, so you don't have to sit there, mixing all the glue by hand and then try and squeeze it in here or put it in here with like a screwdriver or something. This just makes it a lot easier. So we're going to do this here really quick. Now, one thing that I want to mention is that when you're doing this, you want to be really careful that you put just enough. You don't want to put too much, and then when you squeeze these together, you don't want glue to come out from the edges, because then that's going to look really bad and you're probably going to have to redo the job. So what we're going to want to do is just put a line of epoxy right around the edge of where our fabric is. We're going to put a little bit right here because there was some from the factory. We're going to do it all the way around. Then we're going to close it and just make sure that we're getting a nice contact all the way around. And after we close it up, we're going to tape the edges nice and tight so that it holds, a really nice tight seam when we're doing this. And then once the glue dries, it's going to look really good when we're done. So these things are really easy. You just put this mixing tip, you just twist it right on there. It's pretty easy, and then you squeeze it out. Now I find that one of these typically does about one sun visor, so it's pretty good. These things cost about $7, I think. For sure, you can find some other cheaper stuff, but like I said, this works really fast, and it's what I like to use. The glue goes through this tip and it mixes itself together, which is really nice. That saves you a lot of time also. So you want to be really careful when you're doing this not to get this on your hands or on anything where you're going to get it on the outside of the fabric. So what I like to do is just put like a nice, like an 1/8 of an inch bead all the way around both sides. And then afterwards, if we have extra glue, we can come back and put it in the areas where we think we could use some more. But again, you really want to make sure that you don't use too much, because if you use too much, it's going to squeeze out onto the outside of your fabric. You're going to be redoing your job and you're not going to be happy. I almost messed up there. Caught that just in time. Alright, so I did get some of this on my hands, so I'm going to be really careful and make sure that I clean my hands off really well before we close this piece up. Okay, so I think we got enough glue on here. So we're just going to use some painter's tape, so make sure you have that ready by your side. So I'm going to close this up now. And the way we're going to make sure that we have enough glue all the way around is when you squeeze it together, you can kind of hear the glue. If it's touching each other, you can hear kind of like a little squishy sound. If you can hear that all the way around, you know you're good. You know you've got contact all the way around your visor. So I can hear everything quite nicely. So I think we have enough coverage. So I'm going to start taping our sun visor up. And you want to make sure that you tape it up nice and tight, because what we don't want is like a loose gap right here. We want to make sure that's closed. And if we don't close it up all the way, the glue's going to dry and that gap's going to still be there. That the glue's actually going to hold it apart. So these sun visors are kind of interesting. I mean, normally the way sun visors used to be done was they were actually just sewn together on the outside. I think actually that was, for us, it was a little bit easier. I guess maybe at the when they're manufacturing these on the assembly line, it must be quicker to just glue them together, probably because you don't have to train anybody to learn how to sew anything. But this way it looks good, I guess, but it definitely takes more time, I think, than it does the other way. But you know, we have to do what we have to do. All right, so we're gonna let that sit for about 30 minutes to an hour, and this should be ready to go to install on the car. All right, once this is dry, we can go ahead and pull off the tape. All right, so this is looking really good now. We can just kind of massage out the areas where the tape was and it kind of held down the nap. We can just rub those out. I like to kind of rub right here on the seam so it helps pull the fibers out a little bit and makes that seam look just a little bit more even. Okay, we're ready to install these on the car. Alright, if you liked that video and you want to see another one, make sure you click to your right here. And don't forget about all the courses we have available at the Lucky Needle. Click here in the corner to get more information. And don't forget to subscribe right here.